Are you trying to figure out what all is involved in purchasing a home? Well, I'm here to help you. This is part two of my two-part video on steps for buying a home. And if you haven't yet watched the first video, the link is in the description below this video. So be sure to watch it too. So stay tuned as we go through the final steps to buying a home. Hi, this is Brenda Keller. I'm a realtor with Red One Realty, and I'm here to walk you through the process of buying a house step by step. You may feel you're ready now, or you might be checking out what you need to do in order to get ready. And because I have so much information to share, I've divided this information into two videos. So be certain to watch the first video with the first two steps, and the link again is below in the description. Um, in that video, I talk about how to get your finances in order and what happens when you work with a loan officer. So those are the first two steps. In this video, I'm going to go over steps 3 through 7 for how to buy a house. So be sure to watch the entire video. At the end, I tell you how to download a free document with all 7 of the steps spelled out. And I also have a link in the description below to the first video on the steps to buying a house if you haven't already watched it. So first of all, if you like this information, be sure to click on the thumbs up like button and the red subscribe button below this video to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once you subscribe, a bell will appear, and click on the bell to be notified when I post new informative videos. So let's get started by reviewing the first two steps that I talked about in the first video. And those were 1, get your finances in order. You want to raise your credit score to at least 640, preferably 680 or above. And in the first video, I told you how to start on that. Also, you will need money in a savings account to show the loan officer that you can cover the earnest money, the down payment if needed. We talked about different types of loans and some that you might not need a down payment. Closing costs, home inspections, possibly the appraisal fee. And then in step 2, I discussed the documents you'll need for the loan officer and what he or she will be doing to help you get the best mortgage loan for you, whether it's an FHA loan, VA, USDA, conventional loan, and we talked a little bit about each of those. So now we will start with step number 3, finding a great realtor. I work in the Dayton, Ohio area, but even if you're not in that part of the country, almost everything I talk about will apply to you where you are also. So if you're trying to find a realtor, my suggestion would be don't look at the sign in the yard for the realtor that is listing the house, or on the internet, it tells you the seller that's listing the house, because their loyalty, their fiduciary duty is to the seller, so they want to get the best deal for the seller. Now, some realtors will take on both the seller and the buyer. That kind of puts the realtor in a difficult situation, because from that time on, that realtor owes fiduciary duties to both the seller and the buyer. And now what do? If the seller says, should I take that offer, or do you think they'll go higher? You can't tell them. Now you can't tell them, I think they'll go higher, because then you're breaking your duty to your buyer. So don't use the listing realtor. Find you a realtor that is, their loyalty is going to be to you and you only, and getting the best deal for the least amount of hassle they can for you. So it doesn't cost you anything as the buyer, by the way, to use the realtor. Typically, the seller pays the buyer and the seller's realtor's fees. So get yourself your own realtor. It does not cost you, okay, if you're the buyer. Find someone local They'll be familiar with the area. Get an agent who can teach you, who can coach you, who can walk you through the process step by step and explain everything to you. It's the realtor's job to help you find houses and to schedule tours and to find the home of your dreams and put in a competitive offer. They're going to help ensure that you meet all the deadlines, and there are so many deadlines in a contract for the buyer. It's always time is of the essence. You've got to meet those deadlines, and you need to make sure everything is done correctly. They're going to walk you through each step of that process to ensure that the purchase contract deadlines are met and all the conditions are met. And they're going to work to negotiate with the seller all they can to make sure that you're getting the best deal. So find a good realtor who's on your side and who's going to do the best for you. Step 4 is search for homes. Now, we talked in step 1 about getting that letter of approval, the pre-approval letter. You can get pre-qualification, but eventually you have to have the pre-approval in order to meet the deadline in the contract. Within 2 or 3 days of submitting that contract to the buyer, you've got to come up with the saying, okay, this is how much I'm approved for, so I can afford to buy this home of yours. So ask your realtor to set up a search of homes for you that meets your criteria, that's within your price range, which your loan officer is going to tell you what that is, and your letter of approval will say what that is. And then your realtor will have their own website, probably, and search on their website. Ask your realtor, like I said, to set up search criteria for you where you can automatically get emails from that site, and usually it is from your realtor's site, every time a new house hits the market that meets your criteria. And what is it you want? You need to figure this out. What do you have to have, and what do you want to have? What area do you want to be in? What town or what school district? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Most people say I'd like 3 or 4 bedrooms, preferably 2 bathrooms. Is it a deal breaker if you can't get 2 bathrooms? If so, don't be looking at houses that have 1 bathroom. It's a waste of your time and your realtor's time. Do you need a garage? Does it need to be attached, or can it be detached? Can you do without the garage? Do you need a fenced-in yard for children and for pets? Is that something you could do without and put up yourself later, or do you need it now? Do you want or need a basement? What's the square footage you want? So you need to set all that up, and then your realtor is going to help you to tour the homes, set up the appointments, and so you can compare one home with another. You can decide what it is you want, which house it is you want. Okay, and then the next step is step 5, make an offer. Okay, and again, your realtor is going to help you with this. Consider this when you're making an offer, especially on this market right now. And I'm talking the year, I'm recording this the last week of 2021 and through 2020, 2021, and we expect the same in 2022. It's a seller's market. There are more people looking for homes, more buyers than there are houses on the market. So you need to put in a strong offer, but it needs to be at the right price, because if you put your price in over the asking price, which sometimes you have to do to get that house, or have other conditions that are going to be what the seller wants, something that looks appealing to the seller, but make sure that you don't go over the market value of the house, because unless you've got a lot of cash to go over that, you're not going to get a loan that will cover that, and then the deal can fall through. So consider that, and your realtor will be able to do a comparative market analysis for you. They should always do this before you put in an offer, to say, here's what it looks like the house will appraise for. So we don't want to go over that price, but we want to have a strong offer. So consider then also, when you're putting in an offer, are you going to, if you don't put it in today and you're going to sleep on it, and some people say, if you sleep on it and decide later, there's not going to be a later because it'll be gone. And that might be the case. But decide, are you going to be really upset if you wait and just try to decide the next day or two if you want to put in an offer on this house? Because will you be upset if you find out they've already accepted an offer? So that's something to think about in this market. You've got to act pretty quickly, but don't be pressured in to buying something that is not the right place for you. Okay. Your realtor, like I said, is going to do a comparable market analysis, determine the market value of the house, and then your offer is either going to be accepted, or it's going to be counter offered. In other words, they'll say, maybe you offered 155 and you want them to pay $4,000 of the closing price. They may come back and say, we want 160 and we're not paying any of the closing cost of your closing cost. And then you can accept that counter offer, or you can come back with another counter offer, or the seller will just simply decline your offer. Sometimes the sellers won't even respond, and that's usually if somebody has offended them so badly because they've just given a really low ball offer, and they don't always have to respond. Their realtor should encourage them to make some type of a response with simply saying, we decline your offer. But anyway, so those three options, they'll accept your offer and you're woohoo, or they'll counter offer and then you have to negotiate at that time, or they'll decline your offer. Okay, then we get to step 6, and that's when you're in contract. Okay, at this time, you need to, if you put in your contract and they've accepted it, you need to come up with the earnest money. And we talked about that in step 1, finances, and what all you need to get together in step 1 and 2, actually, once you get a loan officer and they're going to help you with all that. So you need earnest money, typically $500 to $1,000 down. If you have a much more expensive home, over 250, 400,000, something like that, you're going to need more than the $500 to $1,000. But count on at least $500 that you're going to put that down as earnest money. You'll give it to your realtor to either put in the title company or in their escrow account. And that's money that you need to show them that you have skin in the game and that you're serious about this. And then you're going to have your contract. It's contingent on obtaining financing. So you've got your pre-approval letter, but it hasn't gone through the underwriter and all the other processes yet where they ensure that you're a good candidate and you can pay your mortgage and you have the money you need to do that. So submit all of your documents immediately when you're asked for them to your loan officer to get things going. Remember, don't make any big purchases. I talked about this in the last video, in the first video, and I shared a horror story with you about a deal that fell through the day of closing because the couple had purchased a refrigerator to put in their new home the day before. And it is not unusual for them to run, sorry about the my phone there. It's not unusual for the title company and the loan company then to run a final credit report the day of closing to ensure that you still meet the criteria, because your loan approval was based on the time that you turned in the loan application and your credit at that time. And they don't want you to go out buying a new truck or a new refrigerator or anything else. In the meantime, don't make any big purchases. Okay, and then also when you're in contract, there are times when you will possibly negotiate again with the seller, and that's if the appraiser doesn't appraise the house high enough, and maybe you can negotiate a lower sell price so it meets that. It might be during the inspection when you find, and usually during the inspection, you don't ask for cosmetic things or things you want or like. What you ask for are things that are safety, security, structural, very important things. And if you have an FHA, USDA loan, VA loan, they're going to tell you, the appraiser will tell you, in addition to what the house is valued at, what has to be repaired before they'll close. And sometimes the seller will do that. And sometimes you negotiate with the seller for, maybe a reduced price, and then they'll do it, or a higher price, and then they'll do it. Or you can like split the cost with them. Somehow you need to negotiate to get everything done that needs to be done to pass the inspections. Okay. The house appraising at the loan amount or higher, like I said, the lender will pick the appraiser, and typically you pay for the appraiser. And it's important that it does meet, the appraised value meets what you're putting down on the house, or your deal won't go through. And then again, you might have to negotiate again with the seller to get the price right as to what you're able to pay. Sometimes in the contracts, they may go with and just cancel your deal and go with someone else, because some people will put in their contract that they will pay so much over the appraised value if it doesn't appraise high enough. And again, we have to meet the FHA, USDA, VA criteria sometimes for the house to pass the inspection. So that's the big thing, is negotiating while you're in contract if you have to. And the last step is step number 7, and that's closing. We're always waiting to hear the magic words. The realtors are waiting to hear that you're clear to close. And that's what the underwriter, the loan officer, they send it to the underwriter, and they look at all your package and your finances and the house cost and the house appraisal and the inspection reports, and they say, okay, you're clear to close. And you go to the closing table, and you can close the house. Before you do that, don't ever skip the final walkthrough. If your realtor doesn't tell you about this, it should be in the contract, and remind them you want to walk through the house. And that's usually within 48 hours before the house closes. You can walk through the house. And this isn't to bring your family over. It isn't to say, here's what we're going to do, or no, we want to ask for this. I forgot about that. No, you're there to walk through to see that no structural damage was done when they were packing up to move, that everything that is supposed to stay is staying. And typically anymore, that's everything that's attached to the house. Even if they have a TV mounted to the wall, TV doesn't have to stay, but that mounting bracket is to stay, unless it's in the contract where they said we're not leaving the mounting bracket. In the part of the country where I am, in the part of Ohio where I am, the Dayton Cincinnati contract now says that all appliances stay except for countertop appliances. So that includes the refrigerator stays now, even though it's not attached, or the stove is not necessarily attached, but they do stay now per the contract, unless it's written into the contract that they're not going to stay. The microwaves that are built in stay, but not the ones on the counter, not your coffee pot. Okay. So do your final walkthrough, make sure everything is there that should be there. And there have been horror stories about this. So one recommendation is to do it the day of closing and do it prior to closing, because there might be, they're selling the house, let's say, because of a divorce, and there's a disgruntled spouse that wasn't living there, and they come in at the last minute and spray paint the walls, or graffiti, or throw concrete down the toilets. And it sounds awful, but that's been known to happen. Or maybe people it's a foreclosure, and the bank's taking the house from them. Instead of retribution for the bank, they're retaliating on you by trashing the place. So go in. My suggestion would be the day of closing, a couple hours before closing, and check the place out and make sure everything is done that should be done, or else you're going to say, we're not closing until this is taken care of, or we're out of the deal because they trashed the place. Okay. Check on repairs that were to be completed during that final walkthrough. Is everything still there? Like I said, for example, the appliances. And then before the closing date, preferably, get your utilities put in your name effective the day of closing. You may need to pay a deposit on those. And then you're going to need to come with your down payment on your loan. We talked about in the first video some types of loans where you may not need a down payment. But if you have to have a down payment on your loan, usually anywhere from 3 to 20%, depending on the type of loan you have, then you need to come with that money to closing. And it's either going to be a bank check or it might be a wire transfer that you have to do. And be very careful about wire transfers. Some scammers have figured out how, when people are trying to close on a house, and they'll send you an email and tell you to wire the money here or there or the other. Make sure that you only hear from your loan company and the title company where to wire the money, and check with them before you do to make sure it is that they are the ones who sent you the email or gave you the information. Anyway, so find out how you get the money to them and make sure that that's done for closing, that they have your down payment. And one thing that people forget about in the closing is you have to come with an ID. And people will show up with a driver's license that's expired and doesn't have their correct address on it. So anyway, make sure you have a non-expired passport or driver's license, with your picture on it, that you bring to closing, and they will be making copies of those for the buyers and sellers. And be prepared to sign, and sign again many documents at the closing table. They'll just keep handing them to you, and take your time. Most of these you've seen before, but read them if you need to. Ask them to explain them to you if you need to. And then you're also going to get the keys. So that's wonderful. There are times when the seller will want a few more days, and typically the title company will work that out with them to charge them for those days. That money will go to you or to your account somehow if they're staying longer. But it's best to try to have occupancy at closing, get the keys, and the house is now yours. And of course, I'd recommend changing the keys, then changing the locks. One horror story about a closing also is sometimes the title company, while you're there, will say something to the effect of, "Now, is anybody signing these papers out of duress or any undue pressure or anything?" Don't joke, like the husbands tend to do, no offense, guys, and say, "Oh, my wife will kill me if I don't sign these papers." Again, a horror story I heard was that the loan officer, the title company guy, got up and walked out of the room. He says, "We're not closing then if he's under pressure like this." And they were, "No, just kidding." He would not close that day. It took like one more day, but they had to go back and assure, the title company that he was just joking. But don't joke. This is serious legal business. Sign the papers, get your keys, and get out of there. So those are the steps, briefly, high level, but hopefully with the first video, part 1, and this part 2 video going through all the steps, you have an idea now of what it takes. It's a complicated process, but with the right realtor, they'll walk you through it without any hassles. They'll tell you what to expect, and you can make it through this. And so my recommendation to you is to get educated on what you need to do, get money in the bank, get your finances in order, get the good, right realtor, and get that new house. God bless you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.